Hello everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and welcome to the New World Order. Well, things really escalated quickly after the last video. We've gone from full-on liberal pearl clutching to just outright Reichstag fire, right? And this video is web. Big tech drops a nuke on free speech. Endgames and solutions. Basically, it was. We kind of expected that this, complicit, action by the Capitol Police and the Capitol Guards would lead to some sort of, action, a new sort of Patriot Act. Of course, Joe Biden was the author of the original Patriot Act after the Oklahoma bombing, which itself was a completely contrived event by all indications. And it didn't actually get passed in full effect back then. And then basically Bush's Attorney General, John Ashcroft, revived it after 9/11 and basically just used it almost as it was written for the text of the Patriot Act. So, and now the global war on terrorism is turning inward to the domestic war on terrorism. And, basically Trump has been banned from Twitter. I believe he's pretty much effectively been banned from Facebook. I believe that technically it's just until after the inauguration, but he's not going to be allowed back on the platform. Parler has not only been taken off of the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store, but Amazon has cut off its web hosting, and basically it's just an outright purge right now. 70,000 Twitter accounts have been suspended. Myself, I'm already banned from Twitter. I've already been banned from Facebook. I'm technically back on now. Once I get banned from YouTube, it will be the Triple Crown. I will have all three on my belt. And so I encourage you to find this channel on BitChute. It is really only a matter of time at this point before this channel is banned. Computing Forever was excised from YouTube, right? And I would say that the content on this channel is probably more outside the mainstream narrative than on that channel by a fair margin. The only difference with this channel is basically they cut off the access, to the algorithm at an earlier stage of development for this channel. So, if you found this channel at all, consider yourself fortunate, I suppose, because not many people after you were allowed to find it. Again, we haven't had any subscriber growth for, I believe, almost 2 years now, maybe almost 2.5 years. They really just turned off the spigot. And, but where things are growing on BitChute, I'm looking at some of the other platforms, to expand for when this inevitably shuts down on YouTube. But it's just, at this point, we're well beyond conversations about Section 230, and we're full on into antitrust territory, right? Rumble is one of the YouTube alternatives. They're now suing Google and YouTube for antitrust because Google has been putting YouTube search results higher than Rumble search results. And that is definitely, this is the same thing that Microsoft got hit on when they installed Internet Explorer on every Microsoft Windows computer. That you can't just automatically give yourself monopoly benefits to, horizontal expansion, entities and enterprises. But of course, whether or not that actually goes through, we'll see. I still have faith that at least some of the judges in this country adhere to some semblance of the original construction of the Constitution. Perhaps that's a delusion, just waiting to be obliterated as well. But again, my faith is not dependent on the political system or the judicial system or really any of the systems created by mankind. My faith is in the system created by God. It's in the biological world, the natural world, and, my own ability to connect with that. And basically, not just in a hippy-dippy sense, but realistically, the more that we can build structures of sovereignty and have that connection, to our own productivity and to the resources that are right underneath our own feet and growing out of the ground, it's very encouraging. I'm very discouraged and disheartened by the number of people who are cheering on the censorship. It really is. I have nothing but disdain, disgust, and utter hatred and contempt towards those who would sell out their fellow, Americans and citizens and people of the world just because of an ideological bent that has been handed to them by the media, right? There's no real linguistic claim that these people have to the word liberal. The word liberal, supposedly means that people, wanted the state and wanted, the big cartels and controlling entities to stop trying to control everything down on the ground level and to let people have a modicum of freedom, right? And again, even when I was young, being liberal meant being free from the, state-backed moralizing of the giant church and state apparatus. And now basically it's the same thing, just on, it's the communist church. It's the church of woke. And, even the banks and all the corporations now are joining suit. They really, again, this was a regular pearl clutching moment before that they were going to use for narrative control. They've decided to go full on and use it as a Reichstag event and use it as basically a premise and a predicate for ushering in the entire next phase of the crackdown and then the Great Reset and the New World Order, etc., where we all become basically serfs under a global cartelized, structure of nations that don't really actually exist anymore. And, we'll see where this all leads. But again, the point is not to be demoralized. The point is to look at solutions. Parler made a big mistake tactically by even hosting on Amazon in the first place. They said that they've gone to all their other vendors. All their other vendors won't talk to them. Although Epic, which is a web hosting platform who at one point hosted Gab, after this whole same process happened to Gab like a year ago, they said that they haven't been contacted by Parler. Perhaps it's because Epic has been cut off from PayPal and this isn't, as full spectrum and full platform for web hosting as, what they need. But in any case, Parler should have planned a little bit more ahead for this. It looks like they've also been hacked big time, and every single Parler post was leaked and archived and will be published under the Internet Archive, which is, a little concerning. And again, there's all these social justice warriors who are basically using this whole, event and narrative control for their own benefit, not realizing that they are the next ones to be purged as soon as they are inconvenient to the system. But, in the communist revolution, the ideologues serve a very useful purpose, right? They're basically the animals on which you hitch your wagon, and then basically when the animals, have finished pulling you to where you want to go, then basically they're, sent to the glue factory because they're no longer useful. And that's pretty much where we're at. People like to say, oh, Biden's not a communist. Hillary Clinton's not a communist. I mean, these people, perhaps not in the old school Marxist sense, but in the sense of totalitarianism and fascism and, what was it, a Saul Alinsky and that whole modality of politics. They're absolutely Marxist. They're absolutely communists on an ideological level as far as the building of power, which is all that communism is ever actually about. The people who think that communism is about a dictatorship of the proletariat are fucking morons. Literally know nothing about the history of communism, just read a little bit of Marx and pretend like they're an expert. They're midwits using big words and, pretending like they're educated. But it's all a sick joke. It's all a completely sick joke. Again, I've decided to declare a ceasefire with regard to my family and their inane liberalism. But every single one of these people in this society who support this are just disgusting, pathetic people, and unworthy of the title American. Because, this country was founded on literally free speech, which no other country enshrines. None. It might be halfway an illusion in this country, but it's not even, they don't even pretend to have the illusion in other countries. So if we lose it here, it is a big deal. As much as I see kind of some sort of civil war on the table, I don't want that to be the outcome. I would prefer that this country have a spiritual revival and come back to its founding roots, because if this country breaks up, just like if it broke up during the Civil War, it would have been a very bad situation, and it would have opened the territory to be conquered by other powers which don't necessarily have any better interests in mind, right? And it's all basically, the division, the shaking of the test tube, right, of the terrarium, and fighting the red ants against the black ants. They won't normally fight each other, but when you shake the terrarium, they all go to war thinking that the others started the fight. We could have our differences and it would be all right. We could live in separate places and then we could just abide by the American system as it was founded. But no, we have to stoke the conflict for the sake of the crisis and the demoralization so that we can usher in the solution, which is the Great Reset and greater totalitarianism. And yeah, basically, like I said, they're talking about a new, expansion of domestic terrorism laws, and, basically that all MAGA rallies will be declared domestic terrorist, gatherings. And it's really about to go into a whole other new spectrum. You won't be allowed to even criticize any of the mainstream narratives. I mean, already we can't really. I mean, you can't. I can make these videos, but nobody's going to see them except for you guys, under 100 views on average. But, you know, you won't even be able to make them in the future. And, you know, so it really is imperative that we develop these alternative systems. You know, Gab, you know, set up their own infrastructure, their own server farm, which is why they don't even use a hosting service now. They have their own servers. They are their own host. And so, you know, apparently Trump joined Parler before it was nuked. Realistically, this is the path forward. Trump, as a private citizen, you know, needs to basically just instigate a whole. Needs to have a whole legal team going with defamation cases against him as a private citizen, which he can't do as a public figure. You know, bring in all that cash from those and basically use his status and his existing wealth to build the alternative media, to buy out the assets of Gab and Parler, you know, basically, or build something equivalent, including the hardware itself. Do not outsource it to any company. Right now that he sees the nature of the game, that even Deutsche Bank and some other bank, you know, are now dropping him and it won't deal with any of his family, direct or extended. I mean, this is really, again, beyond the scope of tech. And, you know, it would be nice if there was some antitrust action that came handed down. But, you know, ultimately, I don't count on any solutions coming from the federal government at this point. And it really, if there's a role for lawsuits to be filed, just like what Rumble is doing, and hopefully can get some relief and recourse in that regard. But realistically, it's about building the alternative system. And this is the mitosis of worlds, as I've been describing for, you know, almost a couple of years now, the separation between the world that is to be and the world that is dying. And the world that is dying, the more that it dies and the more that it loses any shred of legitimacy, the more that it lashes out and it uses the last of its powers that it has in its arsenal, you know, against those who dare to question it. And, you know, in the digital realm, their power is still considerable. In the physical world, it's dwindling precipitously. And again, they have to manipulate the election because nobody actually supports their system. Nobody actually supports Biden except for, you know, these fat losers on the internet, you know, who basically just support their own enslavement. As long as they get their UBI so they can keep playing video games and eating cheese puffs, that's all that matters. But for us who are outdoors and working and producing and connected to the land and connected to productive enterprises, you know, we need to focus on that and start building those communities of production. And, you know, if that entails moving to a new area, if that entails just basically going and kind of creating that insular phalanx type, you know, offensive and defensive structure like I described in the last video, that's what it comes down to. But you cannot be reliant on these structures of centralized control and then be surprised when they try and yank it out from under you, right? The school system, the system of big science, big tech, big medicine, right? Big pharma. You know, it's all part and parcel of the same narrative that is all coming together, coagulating for, you know, again, the New World Order. It's funny that they're still trying to cast things like Deep State and New World Order as like a conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, they're literally censoring millions of people, all of their political opponents, describing anyone who even questions or dares to even question one little tiny bit of the narrative as basically a conspiracy theorist and a heretic and now a domestic terrorist. I mean, it's all, again, a sick joke. And again, the people who support it, I could go on a rant right now and just expound upon my hatred and disgust for these people, but it wouldn't really serve you, the audience. So yeah, basically, again, people need to follow. Trump needs to follow the lead of Gab, help build this infrastructure of alt tech, because the end game is the separation of worlds, and eventually there will be some sort of, you know, conflict between them, you know. And when we have the actual, real greater reset, the real collapse, you know, which will be stimulated by the actual climate change from the sun. You know, it's all going to really come into clear focus of who actually has real power in the physical world versus who has power in the digital world. You know, all those who place their baskets in control in the digital world, when that system goes down, they're going to, you know, it's when the tide goes out, you see who is, you know, swimming naked, and I think they will be exposed as naked. No matter how many billionaires they have on their side, I don't think they really have a real-world infrastructure on the way that the American people do. You know, the patriotic Americans who voted for Trump, who opposed this system, who are in favor of free speech and the original principles of the American founding. You know, I think that we still have a lot of power on our side, but we do need to develop those communication structures. Somebody, you know, a long-time subscriber on one of the last videos asked me if I had interest in ham radio. I think even in the places that we're going, I think even that is relevant too. If going, you know, sort of backward a little bit to solutions that supposedly the internet made obsolete. But here's the thing: is the World Wide Web, right? It was we were all going to be connected, and it has, you know, it has connected us all in beneficial ways. But a web is also something used to ensnare, right? When everyone is connected, and there's, you know, nodal points that can be used as points of control within that network and in that web, then, you know, if those nodes work together, just like Amazon and Facebook and Apple and Google are now doing exactly that, then it can be used as a mass system of control, whereas you didn't actually have that mass system of control before. Even Angela Merkel is saying that, and the French, you know, government is saying this is appalling, not because they support free speech, but just because they're used to the government being the only ones who have the ability to censor, not private corporations. And again, the liberals and communists who say they're a private corporation, man, it's like from the same people who said bake the cake, bigot, you know, for the gay wedding and whatnot. It's just the cognitive dissonance is astounding. And Section 230 should be repealed. The regular common law tort and lawsuits should be the order of the day, because, you know, Section 230 has utterly failed. And, you know, people miss the forest for the weeds. They say, oh, private corporations are allowed to censor whoever they want. The whole premise of the Communications Decency Act and 230 was to try and implement the principles of First Amendment, which is the superseding legal origin and basis, into the context of novel communications technology. Again, utterly failed in its charge, and really should be just abolished entirely, repealed entirely. But again, who knows what'll happen. We'll get our stimulus, we'll get our legal weed, but in the process there will be a march toward full-on socialism. They're not going to be able to go as far as they want because it's still a pretty slim majority, but again, it's the uniparty, and for the real important things, all they need is the right new crisis, and they'll get their support. As Klaus Schwab is saying, the next phase is a mass cyber attack, right? They got their pandemic, and now the next phase is a mass cyber attack, and after that happens, it's pretty clear what the response, you know, and the problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic will be, and that'll be total control of the internet. And, you know, it's they're trying to even get, I think, Gab delisted from ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, which was handed over from American control to UN control by Obama during his last year in office, which we covered back then. And now it's basically, you know, if the UN decides that you can't have that domain name, then I guess that's it. Find a new domain name or whatnot. We really are. It's like we're really faced with, like, you know, they said, oh, build a new platform. You know, it's a free market, and then they build a new platform and they censor you from the App Store. And they say, oh, we'll just build a new website, and they delete your web hosting. It's like, and all over basically a pearl clutching, basically pseudo event. Nothing actually happened. Nobody at the protest actually killed anyone. You know, there was the Capitol Police officer who sustained injuries, but I doubt that was from actual patriotic Americans. Patriotic Americans don't hit cops and the police with fire extinguishers. It's basically Antifa, right? That's just basically a priori should be considered to be Antifa, because that's just not something that anybody who carries a Trump flag and puts a thin blue line flag on their truck, you know, does. Just period. End of story. And so basically they killed no one. One got shot by the Capitol Police, and 3 died of medical, you know, emergencies sustained from injuries. And so can't really be construed as the crowd killing anyone. Again, the death count from Black Lives Matter and Antifa on the streets of the cities. Here in Sacramento, all the windows are still boarded up, and they don't even want to pretend, they don't even want to mention, like, it's a peaceful protest. I mean, it's staggering. I just don't even know what to say to these people. They're so goddamn stupid, and their eyes are so welded shut. I mean, it's just staggering. But Yeah, the mitosis of worlds, we are separating. We do need to build this infrastructure, and at a certain point there needs to be legal recourse, to the extent that it can be found. Again, solutions need to be sought. Even if we lose 99 out of 100, the 1 out of 100 might be a precedent that helps change the game down the line. And again, 75 million Americans are not just going away wistfully because the liberals want them to, and because their Twitter accounts were deleted. Twitter's always been a cesspool. And again, it's not just, support of Trump. It's questioning the vaccine narrative. It's questioning pharmaceutical, modalities in general. It's questioning Einsteinian relativity and all the materialist, claptrap from big science. And anything else in this world, right? The climate scam. It's all going to be pressing forward at hyperdrive now, and so it's going to come down to in-person conversations, and again, build in those networks, because the communication networks that we used to have on YouTube and these other platforms, they don't exist anymore. Even if you haven't been banned from the platform, they're censoring anything you put out. No one's going to be able to see it. So it's depressing in the sense that, you'd like to be able to have those conversations. It was stimulating to see that during that age of internet freedom, but that age is come and gone, my friend, until it is reborn again in the new world, which, will be entirely separated from those who are willingly walking into their own enslavement. And again, we need a billionaire on our side who is willing to invest in this infrastructure. All that it takes is a little bit of infrastructure. Well, maybe more than a little bit at this point. It takes a sizable investment in internet server infrastructure and being able to deliver on the promise of having a safe platform for free speech content, and enabling people to fulfill the prerogatives of the American founders and the First Amendment. And it'll, to the Second Amendment too. There's already a resolution being drafted in the House for gun registration and ammo bans. Oh man, my brothers, we're going into the storm now. Just remember that we are the eye of the storm, and there is peace within the chaos. But first, you have to remember that you have to get over those giant waves before you find the peace in the center of the storm. And we will make it. Have that faith, but it's going to be a rocky time. And again, just focus on productivity in the meantime. Don't let your head explode by focusing on politics, because it's easy for that to happen, myself included. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Follow me on BitChute, and I'll probably be setting up a Rumble account and whatnot. I was posting things on Minds and some of the others. I just didn't really get a feel for the platform, and it didn't seem like there was really any engagement whatsoever. So, it's like, if you already built a platform on YouTube and these other platforms, then it's easy to just kind of port people over. But if YouTube kind of, nipped you in the bud and squelched you before you could build that platform, then it's not really as easy. And, I'm not willing to just blow smoke up people's ass and puff illusions for the sake of building a follower count. I actually am speaking my mind as I see fit, and speaking the truth as far as I can see it in these videos. And maybe that's just not as entertaining to people as blowing smoke up their ass, in the sense of all the wider trust the plan stuff. And again, I covered the Q stuff when it first came out, but it became very clear over the ensuing months that it had been co-opted, and it was being used by the establishment to foment, support for a war with Iran and a whole bunch of other nonsense. And there is a very real core of truth, of course, in the idea that our government is compromised by, a cartel of satanic, pederasts and whatnot. But, when it gets roped in with a bunch of craziness, and people who don't understand, strategy, and it makes us all look really bad. And this is basically like when the guy walked into Comet Ping Pong and shot up the tiles on the floor. It's just that, but like 1,000 times larger. It's all bullshit, but at the same time, it controls the narrative for those who are still tied into it, and that unfortunately entails most of the system. So we'll see what happens, but much love to you all, guys, and we'll talk next time. Peace.
Ah.